that. I mean, if you've got a huge group chasing you, it doesn't really work. But if it's 2v1, should be able to tire them out.
Who else have we got then tonight? Kevin Frood, Max Szymanski, the usual.
All signed up.
They're all signed in. Tonight I'm following Rory. Gordon's following Kyle. You're following Chris. We've got Greg Williams, who will hopefully be man of the course if he turns up on the score. I think he's a 3-1-3-2 rider.
Back up for Greg.
Rob Homer. He just doesn't know about it yet.
Can he get in here?
Yes, he can.
Quite a full schedule for the Friday night.
Yeah.
Kyle's second name anyway. Kyle. No. Going with Kyle. Pascal. 4.5 to 20 minutes.
Right, 3 minutes.
Ride on! Ride on! Ride on! Ride on! Ride on!
Hey, Greg. We're just going to all go. Good evening, race fans, and welcome to HBR25. Tonight, we will see our very first race around the Seaside sprint route that's only been around for about the last week. We will see 3 laps totaling about 21.8 kilometres. We have about a 3 kilometre lead in before we get to the sprints before the S's, and then we'll do a half lap around the volcano and repeat 3 times. Jake, I quite fancy one of our heavier riders tonight. What do you think?
Well, one thing's for sure, I'm betting on a sprint finish. I was talking to our man Chris Shelton earlier about this. It's going to be interesting. He thinks that it's going to be very difficult for a sprint finish to occur. He thinks there's going to be attacks on the small inclines just coming out of the S's, but I disagree. I strongly feel that this is going to be a sprint finish. We've got the usual suspects such as Kevin Frood, Max Szymanski, our solid Friday night powerhouses. So people that are experienced in this sort of race, they understand how to keep at the front. So I'm expecting a sprint finish. I think it's going to be really exciting. We're going to see attacks off the front. I know there's a couple of riders from the same team, so I'll be very interested to see how they interact between each other. I'm expecting fireworks, so very, very interested. Who else are we following tonight then, in addition to my man Chris Shelton?
So we also have Rory Westfold, who I'll be following tonight, and we're also joined tonight by Gordon Sloan, who will be following Kyle No Guts of unknown origin or surname, and we also have our man on the course, Greg Williams, and he'll be building up right now with 10 seconds to go, and here we go. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. It's lights out and away we go. Rory pumping down 500, 600, 650, 700. Oh, he's going big early on. Let's hope he doesn't burn himself out too early. What's going on up front, Jake?
Chris Shelton, as expected, right off the front with another couple of familiar faces. Big Watts, obviously, as we see that first sort of peloton form as we approach the start. As I think the lead-in is a couple of kilometres long, James.
We think 3 kilometres to switch over to Gordon. How's Carl started off?
Yeah, same. Carl started off with a big push at the start. He's just forming into a nice little group now. Carl's really a sort of mid-sea rider, so he's maybe not quite strong enough to hang on to that front group, but he's got a few familiar names around him. I think I can see Gordon Buck there. I can see Ernst Leckies, Robert Homer, all these sort of hard riders that I'm sure he'll be looking to try and beat and stick with. But yeah, just running up the lead in. As Jake was saying, I'm not sure if this will come down to a sprint finish with the essays near the end of the ride and having to pass through it 4 times. But I suspect they will keep as a group together for quite a lot of this, but it attacks multiple times over the essays and on the volcano rise. But nice group of sort of 5 or 6 at the moment, and he's catching up with what looks like Rory, having calmed down a wee bit just ahead of him.
Well, Rory's actually he's still hanging on nearly. I think he might just be sitting up a little bit. No, actually, no. I say that he's going back to like 350 watts. Rory's gone pretty big early on, so hopefully he hasn't taxed himself too much in the early stages. But now he's just being caught up by some of the riders behind him, and hopefully he's just about to settle. Hopefully we can switch to our man on the course, Greg. Greg, can you hear us?
I think he's dropped off the chat here, but I can see Greg there. He's with a group of 1 or 2. He's maybe looking like he's in about 14th place, just approaching the essays. Slightly alone, actually, but I think all the groups are just going to spread out a wee bit through the essays till they find their own sort of pace to group with. And just looking at Carl here, he's pushing away from his group a wee bit, so whether he's just trying to hang on with a few riders in front to get whatever advantage he can.
Yeah, I can see that Carl's gone past Rory, and we're actually doing, of course, the opposite direction to how we thought we were going to do it. So it's what we do is S's before sprint.
This is the correct direction. Yep, through the essays, up the last sort of incline, then down over the bridge for the final sprint, and also still this is the lead-in at the moment. So we're going to hit these essays 4 times, including just a few 500 meters or so from the end. Whether that will take any leg off people for the sprint, we'll have to wait and see. But at the moment, Kyle seems to be powering away on his own, but I'm not quite sure he's going to catch the group in front. So I suspect he'll get hauled back in at some point by the riders behind.
Jake, what's going on up front?
So no real fireworks so far. We've got a front group of about 6 or 7, including Kevin and Chris. The front's not really settled down so far. I've not really seen anything drop below 6 watts per kilo on the very front. So people trying to take lumps out of each other, as is usually the way. I've seen both Kevin and Chris laying down the watts. Nobody sort of attacked off the front, but as I say, it's really not settled down below sort of 6 watts per kilo on the front for the first 3.5 minutes here, just to give you an indication of the sort of numbers that they're putting down. But we're just sort of heading down towards on the downwards 5% towards the bridge as we approach 2.5k. So we should be starting the course proper now, and be very interesting to see how this pans out as we have riders from Peddler, Herd, Race 3R all in the mix. Very, very interesting to see how they counteract. As I've spoken and said that, we've had an attack off the front from an R Wiltshire who's done 8 watts per kilo to get a gap of about 4 seconds. The group behind is just sort of quite content to let him try and burn his legs out there, I think, and just sort of letting him go as it opens up to 7 seconds. So very interesting to see if R Wiltshire can hold off the front there, but I'd be surprised if they're able to keep away from this group of 5 or 6 other riders, including, people with lots such as Chris and Kevin, who are very, very capable of reeling somebody in. So 12 seconds now, but as I say, that R Wiltshire's watts are slowing down to about 5 watts per kilo. So very, very interesting to see if they can sustain that. Chris, I know, will not let him go down without a fight, that's for sure. So, good, and how are things looking with you?
I think Gordon's just nipped off to see if we can find a new man on the course. But in the meantime, Rory was with a group of familiar riders along with Kyle, Gordon Buck, and Rob Homer. He looks like he might struggle a little bit on the S's, and he's just dropped back a bit. So we'll just wait. See that Ernst Leckies is just about 6-7 seconds behind him. So looks like he's going to find himself a new group before too long. But riders are split all over the shop back here, and I think we may settle once again once we get back down to the flat. But it's looking like utter carnage, to be quite honest. Up front, are we still grouping up?
Very interestingly, so just 10 seconds back now is another group, including the Terminator himself, Max Szymanski. You can never quite count him out, can you? Even though there was a gap of about 30 seconds, you never see these front groups come together. When there's a group off the front, it usually stays off the front, but we're about to see these two groups merge and form a sort of super peloton of potentially up to 10, 11, 12 riders on the front here. So very, very interesting to see if R. Wiltshire, whose gap is now 21 seconds, is able to stay away from an even bigger peloton, as it's none other than our galloping Chris Shelton sat on the front, laying down the power to try and work with his teammates, essentially, to bring R. Wiltshire back. Because if they don't do that, then they're riding for second place, essentially. Interesting fact about Chris Shelton. I did some investigating earlier today. I can confirm, I'm unfortunately able to confirm that he's verified as being a weight doper. I've seen documentation. I've seen a picture of him on some scales. I've seen that his weight is 70.7 kilograms. He's masquerading as 72 kilograms on Zwift, so I can say he's negative weight doping. That's how strong Chris Shelton is. He's able to be less than he says he is on Zwift. And
someone needs to tell him to update his profile.
he's waiting until he gets until it's stable for a couple of days, or he gets it down to 70 bang on. So fair play to Chris. That's very, very impressive stuff that he's even saying he's weighing a kilogram heavier than he is. I know he takes it very, very seriously. I know he's worked really, really hard. I know he did a 5-minute ramp test earlier today where his watts per kilo was 5.14 for 5 minutes, which is absolutely insane. So if anybody's capable of working here to bring R. Wiltshire back off the front, it's Chris. It looks like we're seeing some attacks off the front of this group here. P. Schaefer and Chris both doing over 6 watts per kilo as a gap opens up to the small group behind them, including Kevin Flood. They're going to have to work hard to close that gap to Chris. He and this other rider, P. Schaefer, may well just be pulling away here to try and catch R. Wiltshire, who's remained steady off the front at about 5.5 watts per kilo since he broke away. The groups now come together again, but that's just an indication. The big numbers on the front of how hard they're trying to work to bring back R. Wiltshire, but that gap's sort of remaining steady at 22. Max Szymanski's group managed to get within 6 seconds of Chris's peloton and now has fallen away. The gap is 22 seconds. Very, very interesting. I was certain they were going to catch back on when they caught to only 6 seconds, but Chris's team essentially, it's a solo race, but Chris's peloton didn't want to let it happen, and we saw some big numbers from the stronger riders to avoid that group coming together there. So tactically, I'm not sure if that was the right move. They could have used it to bring the breakaway rider closer, as their gap is now growing to 28 seconds. But very, very interesting. As I say, Chris is looking very strong. Kevin's with him. 4.7 watts per kilo still. So yeah, early days, but big numbers. It'll be very interesting to see if they can sustain them. How's things looking with you, James?
So we're bunching up again back here around about Rory's in 27th place. Got a few familiar names. We've got Gordon Buck here. We've got Ernst Leckies. Going to switch over to Gordon Sloan for a quick update on Carl, who I think is just about 13 seconds.
He has, yeah. He came out the sort of town village with a group, but he seems to have lost a bit of ground on them volcano flats. So he's a bit sort of middle of no man's land here. That group ahead is now pulling away about 20 seconds. And actually just the group with Rory, Gordon and Buck, Ernst are 11, 12 seconds behind. I suspect they'll catch him, so probably best if he just eases up a wee bit, waits for them to catch, and then work with them to see if they can pull back any of the riders in front of us. Looks like quite a strong group in front, though. Still putting out big watts, so think it'll be hard for him to catch, but if they let one or two stragglers drop off front, they should be able to pick them off. And looks like we're probably joined with Robert Homer on the screen as well now, who's one of those riders that's passed in front. So it'll be interesting to see if you can pick up with him. Because certainly, judging pace-wise, they should be quite similar.
Yes. Good evening, boys. I'm punching well above my weight again. Struggling to hang on, but...
It sounds like Robert's doing a great job there. I mean, he's hanging on with that front group, pulling that gap away. It's up to nearly 40 seconds now. So just hang along as long as you can, I think, there, Robert, and that'll be the difference, pulling away from the riders behind.
Don't die, Rob. Keep going.
Cheers, lads.
Jake, any progress up front?
So our Wiltshire's gap is continuing to grow. It's 41 seconds now. Looks like nobody's going to be able to close that. Chris is on the front, working very, very hard, but he's not really getting much help from his fellow peloton riders. It looks like they're sort of counter-attacking each other here and happy for second place as somebody attacks off the front, having done no work whatsoever for the last 10 minutes or so. People are obviously being very tactical. Might have a victim of that here with Kevin Flood, who's got a gap of 10 metres that's opened up, but no, fair play to him. He works hard and manages to close it, as we've got a front group of, I think, 7 riders here. So it looks like they're going to be fighting this out for second place currently with what we can see. Just further back from them, about 47 seconds, is that Max Szymanski group, which looks like Max would be one of the favourites to take that with, I think, Greg about another minute and 45 seconds behind them.
I think that's a good indication as to how fast the Shelton group's going if they've dropped Max by 45 seconds.
Absolutely rapid. I think that we're hitting 45 on the flat, from what I can tell at times. Very, very, very quick here. As we hit the incline on the S's where I'm expecting an attack, and here we go. There are attacks. Chris Shelton, Pete Schaefer, both attacking over 10 watts per kilo. This is rapid. Big orange numbers on the screen as Kevin Flood and Pete Boscherel scramble to close the gap. 20 metres it opens up. Chris has got a gap of about 10 metres to the rider ahead, P. Schaefer. So big moves here on the descent as we're going downhill on the S's, coming up to the bridge. Chris is fighting hard to close that gap as they've just torn away from the group behind. Kevin Flood's group has... Kevin and B. Boscherel managed to fight away from the peloton they were in and get a small gap from them. So we've got 3 groups opened up here. Chris has a gap of 8 seconds over Kevin, who has another gap of about 7 seconds over the Pedal Air Riders group behind him. So big moves as we're watching this. Chris has caught up to P. Schaefer, is now on the front leading this group. So they may well work together as the gap to P. Wiltshire on the front decreases now for the first time all race. It's going downwards and we're seeing it at only 38 seconds. So these big numbers from Chris and P. Schaefer might be enough to keep them in this fight. But I think P. Boscherel and Kevin Flood 11 seconds behind were the victims there, but did fantastically well to stay ahead, as you could see from the distance Pedal Air Rider even further back that was obviously on the limit and then really struggled to keep with the accelerations. So as predicted on those inclines, big attacks, and my prediction of a sprint finish might not actually come to fruition here by the looks of it. Still plenty of time, and be interested to see if people can hold these big numbers, but very exciting stuff here. And Chris playing a tactically very astute game. He's making the right moves. He's sat here on the wheel of this P. Schaefer and just sort of getting his breath back from that big catch, presumably before they both try and catch P. Wiltshire, whose now gap decreases to only 33 seconds. So it might not all be over at the front of the race. Gordon, how are things looking with you?
Yeah, Kyle's been caught up with the group behind, so he's now formed a nice little peloton of 8 or 9 of them, with some familiar names: Rory, Harnt, Gordon Buck. They're just hitting, looks like the last turn of the S's as well, so whether we'll see similar attacks like we did on the front with Chris. At the moment, they're keeping it fairly calm, up in the watts a wee bit, but I'm not seeing any sprints off the front, so I suspect this little group will stick together, at least for the moment. They're looking about 40 seconds to the group up the road and 20-30 seconds to a group behind, so they're fairly comfortable where they are. I think they will just try and stick it together. Not quite as many attacks as we see on the front, although there's 1 or 2 edging away over the top of the hill, but I think it'll be a struggle for any of them to stay away from this group. And
Yeah,
it's coming over the top, yep.
It's definitely settled down now. I mean, the first time we went over the S's, there was sort of carnage left, right, and centre. But we're definitely seeing this group of sort of 8 to 10, as you say. We've got Gordon in there, Rory, Ernst is in there, Carl as well. A few names I don't recognise, but they're definitely grouping up together now,
Yeah.
just as we just head towards the line for the second time. So
we've got looks like a Japanese rider going for the sprint for some reason. 13 watts per kilo. He is off the front and gone
My
round the
man,
corner. So
you
sure
in the
we'll
green
catch up with
jersey.
him in a bit once he's recovered. But he's gone for the green jersey and he's got it. So well done.
two laps to go back here. Jake, status quo?
So the gap at the front remains 35 seconds, sort of steady there. It's stabilised to our Wiltshire as Chris and P. Schaefer take turns on the front here. They are working together. They're doing 5 watts per kilo on the front, whilst the other one's starting the draft. And the draft's obviously great, but the draft effect's still 4 watts per kilo, so it's not like they're getting massive amounts of rest here as they go upwards on the slight volcano-like climb. Our Wiltshire just is not relenting, hasn't dropped below 5 watts per kilo, looks to have been 5 to 5.5 the entire time. The gap to Kevin Flood and P. Boscherel grows to 20 seconds as they stay grouped together, although it looks like, again, big watts. Kevin's doing 5 watts per kilo here. They may well be attacking each other. The gap to the rider behind them has grown to even 40 seconds. The pedal air rider T. Zuri, who was in the initial front group of 6 or 7, so decimated peloton. This is going to be very, very exciting as we hit 11.7k, literally just over the halfway mark. We've had 94 metres of elevation. Chris has got a small gap here of P. Schaefer, so P. Schaefer potentially looks like they may be hanging on here a little bit, as Chris does a small little attack here on the incline, just testing the waters by the looks of it, a probing attack of 5 or 6 watts per kilo for a couple of seconds, but he settles back down now as P. Schaefer joins on. The gap just seems to be growing to our Wiltshire. Now it's gone up to a minute, so hard to tell how big that gap actually is. As some of you are aware, the Zwift physics for calculating these things is sometimes a little bit iffy, and it's based entirely on what speed you're actually going at the time. So if you're on an incline or a decline, it can skew it a little bit. But it looks to me like our Wiltshire is about 500 metres up the road, maybe 400 metres up the road. So quite a big gap. But they are halfway through, so our Wiltshire may well tail off a little bit now, unless they are capable of sustaining over 5 watts per kilo for 20 minutes, which is absolutely crazy numbers, and I don't think many people would be able to contend with that. So if that's what they're able to do, then fair play to them. No shame on fighting for second place for the other riders.
I think
James?
we're hearing from our trackside team that the leader of this race isn't actually on Zwift Power, so it sounds like the Chris Shelton battle is actually going to be for the gold trophy. So I think we've got you in the right place, Jake.
Yeah, absolutely. And as I say, it's been tactically very astute ride from Chris. He wants this. He wants to prove he's a category rider, having recently moved up, and we've seen him progress over the last few weeks. And whilst he sometimes attacks and rides for our entertainment and our amusement, he's very, very capable of winning these sorts of races when he sets his mind to it. And I think today we're seeing a more reserved Chris Shelton playing his cards close to his chest, trying to show us exactly how good he really is, and he's doing exactly that. As we come up to the 20-minute mark here, he must have done over 4 watts per kilo. I'd be absolutely shocked if it's anything less than that, and considering his ramp test earlier today, that's big numbers as he sticks on P. Schaefer's wheel here. 40 seconds the gap grows behind to Pete Boscherel and Kevin Flood. 45 seconds even here, as it looks like Kevin's been distanced by a couple of seconds from Pete Boscherel. He's now in 5th place, but has consolidated that with a 30-second lead over pedal air rider T. Zuri. So we're a little bit spread out, but the drama's very much intact, and I think this is the most exciting place to be watching, so I'm very privileged to call Chris's rides, as I always am, but I get the feeling this is going to be a particularly exciting finish. So, Gordon, how are things looking with you?
Yeah, I mean, the group has settled in. They seem to be distancing themselves both from the riders in front and behind, so it looks like a nice settled group we've got here. Just as we went up into the volcano, I saw a few further power-ups thrown down. Created a bit of a gap. We've now got a group of 6 split in half, 3 and 3, but I suspect they'll probably come back together just in the last few minutes or as well. It looks like we lost Gordon, but out the back of the group, so he's dropped off a wee bit behind. But right now, heading through the volcano, looks like a group of 4 trying to chase down that group of 3 that laid down the power-ups on the way in. Hopefully they can catch them. The sort of course that there's a lot of power-ups on offer, so I expect quite a lot of them will be just trying to throw down the power-ups, get that aero ready for the end. But just as we're going through, we're seeing the truck power-up going, getting a bit of a draft boost. This gap does appear to be growing, though. Led on the front by our favourite Ernst Leckes.
I think looks like there's quite a split coming on now. So maybe they'll come. I mean, you've got the little. I mean, we've had the climb into the volcano and the bumps as you go through it. So they could rejoin.
They could do. I'm not quite sure. There's Ernst Leckes and I think it's Chris Cooper. Looks like quite a strong rider on the front. He looks actually like he's probably a Cat B rider. So I think he got stranded on his own a bit before, but he manages to work with Ernst and T. Norris. They could keep this gap away. They're trying to close it behind, but it's getting strung out. We could even find Cal drop off the back if he doesn't keep up.
Rory's with Carl H. Rakia, the previous green jersey sprinter of 12.3 watts per kilo, and Jay Dunkley. Rory's just dropped off a bit, and he's now with Kyle. So yeah, we've got splits all over.
We definitely do. I mean, I think this point's quite critical in the race. Both Rory and Kyle are off the back of this group in front by about 5. If they don't manage to close it now, I suspect it's going to be very hard to try and close it on the last lap. But we're coming up to the S's, and they do have a chance to pull it back at that point. You can see Kyle is up in the watts. He's holding consistently over 3 watts a kilo now, just trying to close that gap. He's probably aware, like everyone else, you can't let the gaps go because without the draft, it's mission impossible to catch a group in front.
Yeah, I think Rory's got the same idea. He was just pumping out 300 for a little bit as well. So Carl's partially dropped Rory, and Carl's making a big push to get back to this group. Does Rory have anything in his legs to get back? He might not do. But we'll see in the next minute or so. But looks like Kyle's pretty much back to that group of 4 or 5 with Ernst and Co.
Just about. He's probably a 10 to 50 metres off the back. It keeps going up to about 4 watts a kilo. With the S's coming, I think he will catch if he just gives a push on a couple of them. Rory is getting distance a wee bit now, so he's going to have to make a big effort through the S's to catch John. That'll be probably the last opportunity, because after that there's quite a bit of flat and downhill round the volcano. So it could be a lonely last lap if they don't manage to close this gap soon.
Yeah, I think he might end up with some of our other friends, Ian McClaverty, Janice North, John Richardson. They're all about 40 seconds back, so they'll all be in a group, so drafting. So Rory could find himself in a bit of a sprint finish for 31st place, but we'll see how that one pans out, and we'll just switch up to the front with Jake. How's Chris doing?
So Chris is doing very well. He is working with P. Schaefer to sort of try and close this gap. Speaking of the green jersey, as you mentioned, just our Wiltshire, our leader at the front, has decided that the race lead isn't enough and he wants the green jersey to go with it, which he's duly taken. I noticed some big orange numbers on the screen as he went through that, so he's obviously a bit bored being that far out in the front and just deciding to stretch his legs to take the green jersey. So Chris and P. Schaefer are sort of diligently working together, taking turns on the front to close that gap as best they can. The gap ahead of Kevin and P. Boscherel is growing. It's over a minute now, so fair to say, as strong as those two are, they're going to find that very, very difficult to close that gap to Chris and P. Schaefer. So they're fighting for the podium places, and as you say, the gold trophy on Zwift Power, which, as we all know, is the most important thing in Zwift. So all to play for as we approach the 17-kilometre mark. So we're just hitting under 5 kilometres to go now, the business end of the race. We're at 24 minutes elapsed. I think I predicted about 27, 28 minutes at the start of the race. I think that's going to be a little bit premature. I think we're probably going to approach that sort of 30-minute mark, but still blistering times here as we're doing 42 kilometres an hour on the flat, 25 minutes into a very, very high-paced race. So no signs of anything letting up here. And these two perfectly content to sort of let that gap over Kevin grow whilst they work together. I think our Wiltshire is going to safely take the first spot in terms of on the road, but very, very interesting to see which one of these makes a move first. You know it's going to happen. I doubt they're going to get to the 250 metre mark out and go for a sprint finish between the two of them. I'm expecting some fireworks as I say, approach less than 5k to go. Very, very excited. Who's going to go first? When are they going to go? Is he going to stick? I know Chris has got some cards up his sleeve. When is he going to play them? I have an idea. We were talking earlier about his tactics and potentially his end game for this. He's in a position where the end game we discussed is very viable, and I'm not going to give it away by talking about it on the stream. But if he does it, I'll shout about it and tell you all about it. But I think this might be the time for him to bust that move out. So we'll see. I'll pass you over to James for an update a bit further back.
Yeah, I just want to quickly switch over to our long and lost but not forgotten friend, Rob Homer. Rob, how are you doing out there? I think you're in 20th spot.
It's settled down a bit now. So I manage. It's not such a hard job to hang. Keeping the gap behind, that's looking steady. I'm happy if we can stay at this.
Good work, Rob. Well done. Just back with Rory. Looking around us, he's got a 30-second lead back to Mark Mamrega, John Richardson, Gordon Buck, and a few others. I also spotted our Japanese friend who previously held the green jersey. He went for it again. He didn't quite get it, but I definitely saw 12 watts per kilo flying up in the numbers. But Gordon, it looks like Kyle sort of got back on, but then didn't.
Yeah, I mean, as we said, he really tried to push there, coming towards the S's, but I think that just burnt him out a wee bit. So he's lost that group in front now, and the gap's up to 40, 50 seconds. So I think he's probably realised that's gone. Probably a bit of an interesting one now. He's got Rory just 5 seconds behind in the chasing group, including Ian, Janice, and a few other riders. The gap's now dropped to 14, 15 seconds. So I think that gap is going to come right back. So Kyle's best tactic is probably just to sit up a wee bit, let that group come back and save some energy, because he's certainly going to win a sprint finish, I think, by the time that group catches him up.
I think also with that, if him and Rory can work together, they can possibly stay ahead of the other group. But that group's they're closing really, really quickly. I
thought that might have been an option at the start, but I think that the gap's so close now that there's not really much chance that they can work together and stay away. It's down to 15 seconds with Ian on the front. Looks like he's driving it. Unless one or two from the group behind can close that gap, and then 4 or 5 of them take a breakaway. But if not, we're probably going to bunch up with maybe 5 to 10 riders here, and then it could be some fun time through the S's to finish. Just see who's got the energy left in them.
Yeah, definitely. Carl's now just 4 seconds in front of Rory, so I think he's definitely realised that his best option is to try and recover for a little bit and then regroup. The group behind Rory with Ian McClaverty, Gordon Buck, AU from Japan, John Richardson, Janice North, Jade Jarvis out of the UK. They're just 7 seconds back now and closing quickly. So it's all coming back together. So it could be a very interesting finish. Jake, I think you're down to the last 2K now.
Yeah, I think we spoke earlier, did we say 21.7 was the sort of consensus as to the finish line?
21.8.
That looks about right, yeah. It's probably about 1 or 2k through the S's, and that should be the finish of the sprint banner.
So we hit the 20k mark as I speak, 28 minutes, 48 seconds. Absolutely blistering time. It looks like the calm before the storm here. Both Chris and P. Schaefer have sort of let off the gas a little bit. I get the impression this is cat and mouse, and both guys deciding when they're going to make their move. The gap for Kevin Flood and P. Boshrell's shrunk down to 45 seconds now, so they have eased up a tiny bit on the front here, and it looks like Wiltshire has taken that. I can't see him on the course anymore, which would fit in with our sort of timeline. So this could be it. very, very shortly, we're about to see some fireworks, I would imagine, as we hit 20.4k. So just over a kilometre left. What I'll do is I'll pass you over to James for a quick update before I presume we'll come back to myself for the finish.
Yeah, so pretty much as we were. We've sorry, my leaderboard's gone a bit skew with, but the group behind is literally just about to catch. Ian is now just 1 second behind Rory. Gordon, Kyle is just 2 seconds up, and Rory's just about to catch. So all grouping up very nicely for the finish, and we will just quickly switch over to Jake for the final kilometre.
So we're into the climb here as we hit the 4%. I'm expecting this is it. And as I say it, there he goes, 10.5 watts per kilo. This is what we talked about earlier, springing the trap early, not letting it get down to the final 250 metres. We spoke about this. Chris has a fantastic 1 minute effort of 7.5 watts per kilo. He's got a gap of 1 second. P. Schaefer, it's a 20 metre gap now. It seems to have worked as we hit the decline. He's over the top of that. He's at the minus 5%, 25 metres as he's coming up very, very shortly to the sprint banner. He's holding steady at 27, 26 metres over P. Schaefer. It's coming down 23 metres, 22 as we hit the sprint line. It's coming down to 17, 16 metres. Is he going to be able to hold him off? Chris gets out the saddle. He sprints 10 metres, 9 metres, 8 metres. P. Schaefer is closing as Chris hits the line. Oh, he's taken him on the line. He's managed to overtake Chris just as he gets to the line. Chris emptied the tank there. Absolutely sensational effort. That was literally 10 metres too short for Chris. Very, very unlucky there. If he'd gone maybe 10 metres later, he'd have taken that. P. Schaefer was dumbfounded. The surprise attack definitely worked. You could tell he did not know what to do. He had to really empty the tank and give everything to catch up to Chris, who did sensationally to get away there with massive numbers on a really tough climb of 5%. Huge effort, especially after a 31-minute race there where he's done big numbers. So very, very unlucky to Chris. He takes the silver medal on Swift Power. Very good effort from him. I know he's going to be very disappointed. Yeah, he's going to be disappointed not to take that, but you shouldn't be, Chris. That was absolutely fantastic and played it to perfection there. Really exciting stuff to watch, and didn't quite pan out this time, but next time it will. So I'll pass you back over now.
Thanks, Jake. Fantastic finish. We are all one massive big family group right now. We have upwards of 10. Gordon, you specialise in sitting on the back wheel. What would you do now?
I would absolutely sit on the back wheel, especially as Carl's been out on his own for the last probably 5 or 10k, probably just about. So definitely sitting in this group. There must be, I reckon, about 10 of them in the group. Looking at the stats, looks like Carl has a fairly decent sprint, so if I was him, I'd be feeling comfortable at the moment, just trying to rest up. Hopefully he's managed to get a decent power up. I'm still seeing the aero power or truck draft power ups going down, so absolutely just sit in this group, get as much rest as you can, and see what the plan is for the essays, whether we go for a long sprint or not. But certainly if I was Kyle, I'd just be waiting, sitting on the front 1 or 2 wheels, but as we say that, he is going on the front of this group and then pushing, so maybe he's trying to tire a few of them out, but I don't see this group splitting up much. There's nothing to catch in front or behind. There's a minute gap in front and a minute gap behind, so all to play for in the group. But just sitting in, waiting for the essays, waiting for the sprint, seeing what's going to happen. We've also got usual faces in this group. I think we've got Janice there, Janice North, Ian McCarthy, Rory, as you mentioned, that we're watching. All looking good. It's going to stick together till the essays bring it apart, and bet at least probably 5 or 6 for a sprint finish out of this group. And looking at it, well, we want to nip back over to Robert. Is that you all alone on the course now? Looks like you're coming in towards the finish.
It is, yeah. I blew up off of that back.
Okay, so you've dropped off the group that you're with, but looks like you're still going strong. All alone. Is there any chance of catching anyone?
I'm not going to catch anybody, but it looks like I might be caught.
Okay, well, push on then. Not far to go.
Oh, yeah, cheers. I'll try and keep up with these boys now.
Good luck, Robert. Home stretch.
And just on screen as well, we've changed Chris's screen to, I think it's Lisa Jones, which looks like as well, she's a bit further back in a group of 4 or 5. I think they're probably the chase group behind Kyle and Rory, which looks very similar, just sitting in with a nice group 4 or 5, waiting for the craziness that comes at the end of all these races.
Yeah, we're down to the last 1.5 kilometres here. Rory's was a little bit distance on the first couple of lumps, but I think he's just got back on now. Gordon Buck is right on his wheel, and we're all back together as a bunch, just being led out by Mark Mamriga out of the US. Got about another 2 or 3 lumps before the big one, and I think really there's going to be 2 tactics from here on in. Either you go really big like Chris did on the last hill, or just leave it all to the sprint. Now, I know Rory can put out 750 watts on the flat at the end, as we saw on the team time trial on Thursday. So I think his best hope is to try and hang with everyone over the hill and then just go for everything on the through the sprint. But we've probably got a few lighter riders in here who may well have a better option of going hard on the last hill. We're down to the last 900 meters, just gone past 35 minutes. 167 and counting meters climbed, not far to go, and Rory's just thrown the feather. So as I was saying, just trying to hang on the larger lumps, so he can have a big shot of a sprint. But he's in good shape, good position. He's certainly not scared to put the watts out. We're seeing over 300 on that last hill, and we are over the S's now. We will just come down here, swing a left, and then it'll be the sprint. So Rory just needs to hang on. Kyle is a couple of riders just up. Last 500-600 meters now, just coming up to a left-hand turn before the start of the final sprint. Ian McClavity's just in front. Jarvis as well. Janice on Rory's wheel, just coming over the bridge onto the sprint now. Has Rory got anything left? We're seeing 500 watts. Has he got more? 900. Oh, big numbers. Come on, Rory. Come on! Last few meters. Oh, he's just tailed off. Finishing in 32nd place. Gordon, I didn't see where Carl was.
Kyle, it looks like maybe that earlier effort on his own burnt him out. Like he came in sort of last towards that group. He was pushing up 3 or 4 or 5 watts per kilo, but certainly not what he can put out a sprint. So I think that early push on his own really has probably tired him out, and that's what's ruined his race for him. But he finished strong with that group, but no sprint. I've looked like he had maybe a draft power up, so maybe lacking an aero power up as well. He thought there was not too much point trying to sprint against some riders that were stronger. But he finished well with the group. And it looks like chasing in now is the Lisa Jones group coming in behind.
Quick shout out to Janice North for getting the ladies' green jersey as well. And hopefully we'll see Lisa crossing the line. Yeah,
it did. It looks like Janice North actually won that little group sprint against Rory, Ian and Kyle, plus some other riders. Thought actually Mark Mamrega might have been a strong one for the sprint, but it looks like he's finished just in front of Kyle as well. But they were certainly all going for it then, so multiple power-ups getting thrown down, and a good sprint finish there.
Yeah, it looks like Lisa's group's just going over the last hill before, again, we finish the S's and then head down to that left-hand turn before the sprint. So only 700-800 meters to go, and once Lisa's over the line, we'll call an end to tonight's coverage. But reckon 600 meters, and we are just coming up to the left-hand turn before the sprint banner starts.
It looks like she's in perfect position at the minute, probably 4th wheel of this little group. So hopefully she's got with a sprint here, she can get past 1 or 2 of them, I would have thought. But just as they're hitting the bridge, not seen any power-ups at all, so maybe they've used them all up. But she's still sitting in 5th place. Hopefully she can go for a sprint here. And passing one, looks like probably going to finish this group in 4th place. Well done, good job.
Well done, Lisa. And On that note, I'll say a big thank you to my co-commentary team of Gordon and Jake, and a big thanks to Damon from ZMS for providing us with our four-way screens for tonight's stream and all the others we've done recently. So thanks everyone, and thank you everyone for watching, and we'll see you this time next week. Thank you and good night.